The door burst open, and the special ops team rushed in, synchronized and uncompromising. Agents from the FBI, ICE, and DEA deployed according to the planned formation. One team secured the main entrance, one team sealed the rear exit, and one team swept the entire basement. Every step, every action was tightly coordinated. The sole objective was to neutralize the network and seize the evidence concealed within the building. The raid on the first apartment wrapped up in seconds. The suspect was subdued. The handcuffs were tightened, and fake passports and ID papers were seized. The evidence collection team began sealing the document bags. The DEA team checked the storage compartments and discovered boxes arranged by lot number. A secret vault was opened, revealing plastic containers bearing shipping symbols, the hallmark of an organized logistics chain. The level of organization and division of labor indicated this wasn't a standalone operation but a systematic structure. At another warehouse in the Bridge View area, the forces encountered organized resistance. The suspects leveraged the warehouse structure for cover and opened fire to create an escape corridor. The assault team applied advanced control measures, sealing the exits, overwhelming each storage bay and isolating the source of the gunfire. Several agents sustained minor injuries and were transferred out for initial treatment. The key suspects were neutralized or arrested on site. In the cold storage room, the seized goods exceeded initial estimates. The packages were sealed for further investigation. On the city streets, the pursuit operations were executed with high professionalism. Mobile teams split up, cutting off escape routes from the front and back, forcing several suspicious vehicles to stop. Those trying to flee abandoned their cars and took off on foot, but the tracking net was already cast. Foot teams quickly secured alleys, swept backyards, and apprehended individuals before they could disappear into adjacent residential areas. The coordination between ground forces and low-orbit surveillance equipment optimized the speed of capture, minimizing the suspect's escape time. The Mission Command Center functioned as a strategic intelligence hub. Data from drones, ground reconnaissance stations, and signal systems merged on the screens. The red dots on the map gradually connected into a network. Coordination orders were issued fast and accurately. Team A was ordered to breach the warehouse, Team B to blockade the rail line, and Team C to sweep the locations marked on the shipping manifests. All collected evidence, phones, laptops, transaction records, was processed under strict chain of custody procedures to ensure the case's legality. A focused firefight occurred at the warehouse near the rail line when the assault team breached a disguised cargo compartment. The suspects attempted to barricade the entrance, but the plan to retake the passage was ready. The team formed up for a close-quarters approach, isolated the source of fire, and accessed each compartment. Inside the compartment, components and equipment possibly used for weapon transport were found. This evidence was immediately sealed to analyze the supply chain. A few suspects were sufficiently injured to stop resisting and were separated for questioning and identification. The sweeping operation extended to docks and freight yards. Shipping containers were checked thoroughly, and chemical cargo boxes were opened to find hidden contraband. A lot number label indicated the origin of shipment, a clue that reinforced the theory of a transnational supply chain. Financial analysis teams cross-referenced related transactions, gradually unveiling the underground financial system connecting the shell companies. The scope of arrest significantly tightened the local operational links. Dozens of individuals were taken to the center for interrogation. Tons of evidence were sealed, and records and electronic devices were handed over to the analysis division. The initial success didn't mean the end. New data pointed to the next hotspots on the map. Units established plans for continued sweeps, and the encircling action had begun, ensuring today's operation served as the basis for subsequent actions, with the goal of completely dismantling the organizational network. South Shore streets were completely locked down. Special operations forces were deployed simultaneously, with each element moving in tactical formation, leaving no vulnerability. Every building, every apartment was on the target list confirmed by ICE and DEA intelligence data. The agents didn't speak. There were only hand signals and glances among people who understood that any delay could cause this network to vanish. As the first formation secured the apartment building, the reconnaissance team split off to the rear. The remaining two teams set up an outer protective perimeter, completely controlling the building's circumference. The first door was breached, and the entry team split into two directions. One group advanced to the second floor, the other swept the ground floor. The occupants were quickly subdued. Storage devices, phones, fake IDs, and financial records were seized. Everything was under absolute control until the second team encountered a pocket of resistance. Inside the apartment at the end of the hall, a group of armed individuals barricaded themselves. As the special ops team approached, they opened fire from behind a brick wall. The counterattack forced the team to immediately switch to tactical defensive posture. The team leader ordered the deployment of flashbangs, cutting off angles and advancing room by room. Safety clicks, lights flooded the area. Within a few dozen seconds, the area was controlled. 2 suspects were neutralized, and 4 others surrendered. One agent sustained a minor shoulder injury and was pulled out for immediate first aid at the scene. In Bridgeview, the situation was tenser. Warehouse No. 12, the operation's largest staging point, became the center of the confrontation. When the DEA team approached, the suspects had set up firing positions from the high shelving rows. Agents used a cross-approach tactic, taking cover behind industrial materials, gradually suppressing the enemy's firepower. The engagement lasted just over 2 minutes, but the intensity was extremely high. 2 agents were injured by shrapnel, and 6 suspects were taken down. When the smoke cleared, dozens of sealed shipping containers were revealed inside the warehouse, narcotics disguised as industrial goods. The entire area was secured for inventory of seized items. On the Southern City Freeway, a suspicious truck broke through the perimeter, driving at high speed. The pursuit force immediately deployed tactical vehicles in chase. A camera mounted on a helicopter recorded the entire pursuit. When the truck plunged into the industrial park, Pursuit Team 3 cut off the route, boxing the vehicle in, forcing it to stop. 3 suspects inside scattered and fled. 2 were arrested on the spot, and 1 was apprehended a few minutes later by the flanking team. All cargo on the truck was confiscated. Preliminary inspection results showed it contained materials used to manufacture synthetic stimulants. Meanwhile, the command center recorded signals from other areas. In Brighton Park, another group of suspects attempted to burn files and retreat via the railway tracks. Quick reaction special ops teams closed in from 2 directions, cutting off the front and surrounding them. The chase lasted less than 5 minutes. 3 suspects were subdued, 1 with minor injuries. Crucial evidence was seized on the spot, including computer hard drives and transaction records linked to Texas. When all engagement points were temporarily secured, new intelligence was compiled. The server system at the center showed a massive amount of data collected. Money transfer lists, transportation maps, and digital account chains. All evidence indicated that the network was not only involved in human and drug trafficking but also smuggling weapons disguised through commercial logistics systems. That afternoon, the investigating teams coordinated to resweep all targeted areas. Initial results: over 70 suspects arrested, 4 warehouses seized, 2 agents injured, and no civilian casualties. The forces were withdrawn to a temporary base near Midway Airport to consolidate data and reanalyze the network's operational change. In the command room, the electronic maps gradually lit up with new point signs that the operational chain had not stopped. The next coordination order was issued: expand the scope of the sweep, tighten all transit routes. Chicago remained in a special control status, and Operation Midway Blitz had only completed the initial phase of the counterattack. The temporary command center near Midway Airport operated non-stop, with agents rotating to update data. All computers, monitors, and electronic maps were brightly lit with markers. Data streams were analyzed frame-by-frame money transfer accounts, shipping invoices, batch codes, and satellite images. Layer after layer of information fit together, revealing a sophisticated financial network hidden under the guise of a legitimate business chain. ICE's financial analysis team identified millions of dollars in transactions flowing through shell companies in Texas, Arizona, and Panama City. From the outside, they were just car washes, laundromats, or small trucking businesses. But the data showed these accounts were more active than real businesses, transferring money daily with unusual frequency. This money was legitimized through crypto wallets and moved to intermediary banks overseas. An underground financial chain had been operating steadily within the U.S. for months. The FBI cross-referenced communications data and discovered a chain of encrypted messages sent out just hours before the raids. The decoded content revealed an order to destroy goods and erase evidence. That meant a portion of the network was still active. The director of operations, Agent Helena Vasquez, ordered an expansion of the investigation's scope, focusing on federal logistics routes. The command was short: don't let them withdraw from the city. As field teams began tracing the financial trail, new data emerged. A group of suspects had just moved out of Chicago, carrying unidentified goods. ICE immediately coordinated with state police to set up checkpoints on the I-55 freeway. That afternoon, a truck was ordered to stop in the Joliet industrial area suburb. When the special ops team approached, the driver accelerated, trying to break through the perimeter. The vehicle was subdued using mechanical enforcement measures, and 2 suspects were arrested. Inside the vehicle, chemical containers were labeled falsely. A quick inspection revealed they contained precursors used to manufacture synthetic drugs. At the same time, another DEA team raided a small warehouse in Cicero. Inside, they found a computer system used to manage shipping and internal transactions. The recovered data showed the network had expanded into 4 states and had ties to a Mexican criminal gang. The group's internal accounting software recorded over $12 million transferred back and forth within 4 months, through the chain of disguised businesses. Reports were transferred to Vasquez's desk. She said nothing, only ordered the reopening of all old transaction records. Cross-referencing data between states showed a match between some trucking companies and city construction contracts. This raised suspicion that the criminal network had infiltrated the local economic system through legitimate contractors. The Domestic Counterintelligence Division was called in to investigate the links between these money flows and politicians in Chicago. While the interrogations were ongoing, the Quick Reaction Team reported another suspicious shipment in the southwest of the city. A convoy of container trucks left a warehouse without a legal shipping order. The Special Ops team tracked and followed them through the Bridgeport industrial area. The chase was clean, with no sirens, only the dry command, "Cut them off, don't let them escape." 3 containers were detained. 2 suspects were arrested, and the evidence included cargo lined with metal and electronic devices capable of concealing contraband. All data recovered after the first 48 hours was processed by the intelligence system. The financial charts clearly displayed the connections between the accounts, businesses, and transport routes. A transnational network emerged, from the Mexican border to Illinois, every branch connected to a single command center located in the Chicago suburbs. Vasquez reported directly to Washington. In her summary, she concluded, "This is no longer an immigration issue. This is a deliberate infiltration." That statement was recorded in the minutes as the opening order for the next phase. The command team approved a broader counterattack plan, extending the scope of the sweep to the entire Midwest region. The streets of Chicago were plunged into an alert status. The expanded sweep order was implemented across the entire Midwest. FBI, ICE, and DEA agents coordinated with Illinois State Police to establish dozens of checkpoints, controlling all routes into and out of the city. The atmosphere was as tense as a military emergency. Each special ops team received new targets, focusing on shell companies, warehouses, and remaining logistics centers in the transportation system. In the western industrial area, a convoy of special ops vehicles approached a suspicious warehouse. The metal door was breached with a hydraulic cutting device, and the assault team moved inside. Immediately, return fire erupted from the second floor. The suspects were armed with automatic weapons, entrenched behind cargo containers. Agents deployed a cross-pincer formation, cutting off the source of fire with smoke rounds and mobile shields. The engagement lasted over 2 minutes, ending when 2 suspects were injured and 5 were arrested. The seized items were identified as a batch of synthetic drugs awaiting distribution, along with industrial-scale packaging and pressing equipment. In the south of the city, the ICE team raided an abandoned housing complex used as a staging point for illegal immigrants. Inside, dozens of individuals were crowded into the cramped space. They claimed they were hired to transport goods but didn't know the true purpose. Some matched the suspect list in the network's files. Humanitarian support units were dispatched to temporarily detain and classify the individuals. The team's main mission remained the same: to trace the organizational leads. While the raids unfolded rapidly, the local political class began to react. At City Hall, the Illinois governor publicly criticized the militarization of law enforcement, claiming the federal government had overstepped local authority. Immediately, the media seized on the event, turning Chicago into the center of a national debate. Numerous news channels broadcast images of armored convoys and armed agents patrolling residential areas. Human rights activists spoke out, alleging the operations had swept up legal immigrants as well. Protests erupted in Little Village and Cicero. Residents gathered along the streets, holding signs opposing the mass arrests. City police were deployed to maintain order, but the public outcry spread quickly. Meanwhile, the federal side maintained its position. The operation was not aimed at immigrants but at dismantling a criminal organization using the immigration system as a cover. Director Helena Vasquez stated briefly during a closed meeting, "If we back down because of politics, they'll re-establish themselves within weeks." On the ground, the tactical units did not stop. The DEA team discovered another warehouse in the Joliet area. As forces approached, the suspects used a truck to block the door and opened fire in resistance. The emergency situation forced the assault team to breach the side wall to approach from the opposite direction. The fight was swift but fierce. One agent was injured by a metal fragment. 2 suspects were shot down while resisting, and the rest surrendered. Inside the warehouse, a large number of containers held assault weapons, rifles, grenades, and ammunition belts which were logged. The batch code on the label led back to Guadalajara, confirming the transcontinental origin. Concurrent reports showed that the financial transaction routes had been completely blocked. Over $8 million in assets were frozen, and a series of automatic money transfer accounts were closed. The CJNG's underground logistics system in Chicago was virtually paralyzed. However, Vasquez warned internally that the network had the potential to restructure quickly, especially while connections outside the territory remained active. She requested that analysis teams continue to monitor existing transaction codes on cryptocurrency platforms to prevent the re-establishment of the money laundering chain. That afternoon, the command center recorded new communication signals from the Indiana area. A group of suspects was believed to have fled the city before the perimeter closed. A federal pursuit order was issued immediately, expanding the scope outside Illinois. Mobile teams deployed, connecting with neighboring state police to continue the search. The data collected from continuous sweeps was transferred to the command center near Midway Airport. The screens constantly lit up, displaying chains of transaction codes that had not yet been neutralized. Analysts detected a new signal originating from Mexico and ordered to destroy evidence and transfer all remaining data to a transit route through Indiana. That information was immediately relayed to Director Helena Vasquez. She didn't hesitate. The counterattack order was issued right after. Activate Phase 3. Expand across the entire Midwest. Special ops convoys were mobilized. Coordinated teams from the FBI, DEA, ICE, and state police split into 7 prongs, heading toward railway stations, freight yards, and cargo depots. Objective: to cut off all remaining transportation flows of the CJNG network. All routes were kept under absolute secrecy. Mobile checkpoints were erected along the freeway, stopping and checking all suspicious cargo vehicles. Unmanned reconnaissance aircraft conducted thermal scans from the air, noting unusual signs around container terminals. At the Joliet Industrial Park, DEA Team 4 approached a large warehouse suspected of being a weapons staging point. The steel roll-up door was breached with a cutting charge, and the assault team entered in 2 directions. Daylight shone through the ripped metal roof, reflecting off hundreds of stacked shipping containers. As the forces advanced deep inside, return fire echoed from the mezzanine. Suspects used semi-automatic weapons, firing from a vantage point with a clear view. The special ops team returned fire with controlled suppression tactics, gradually moving up the stairs. The firefight lasted 3 minutes. 2 suspects were injured, and 4 were subdued. Once the area was secure, the team checked each container. Behind a false wall, they discovered a large-scale weapons cache: assault rifles, grenades, and armored ammunition belts. Every package bore a shipping label traceable to Guadalajara. Not far away, ICE and FBI forces jointly raided a container yard near the railway. A train car preparing to leave the area was stopped. Initial checks declared the cargo as industrial chemicals, but upon closer inspection, the technical team found hidden wooden crates containing compressed opium and light explosives. 3 suspects were arrested. 1 attempted to flee across the tracks and was subdued after a brief chase. The entire batch of goods was confiscated, and the scene was secured for chemical analysis. At the same time, in the Indiana area, state police coordinated with federal teams to stop a convoy of trucks crossing the state line. One of the vehicles was equipped with a remote-controlled hidden compartment. When discovered, the driver attempted to activate a self-destruct system, but the technical team managed to neutralize it in time. Over 3 tons of chemical precursors were seized, along with some mobile drug processing equipment. The arrest was swift, with no civilian casualties. Reports from the field poured in continuously. The total amount of weapons seized exceeded predictions. Hundreds of guns, dozens of grenades, and nearly a ton of ammunition. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed that the CJNG was not only exploiting immigration to hide drug trafficking but was also smuggling heavy weapons through the commercial logistics system. Preliminary results: over 100 suspects arrested, $8,600,000 in assets frozen. All related warehouses, freight yards, and businesses were temporarily shut down for auditing. At the command headquarters, Vasquez chaired an emergency meeting. Technical reports showed that the network's logistics chain had been almost completely cut, but the final instructions from Guadalajara had not stopped. A new group was attempting to re-establish the transport route through Wisconsin. An order from Washington was issued. Maintain the operation. Prioritize interdiction. Technical teams immediately implemented electronic transaction blocking measures, freezing all active crypto wallets. That afternoon, the Secretary of Homeland Security spoke at a press conference in Washington. His tone was calm and firm. This is not an operation aimed at immigrants. This is an operation against organized crime hiding within the immigration system. The numbers announced to the media: over 120 suspects arrested, tons of narcotics and weapons seized, no civilian casualties. In Chicago, the streets gradually quieted down. Checkpoints remained active. On the center screen, the red dots slowly faded. But Vasquez knew the silence didn't mean the end. The simultaneous raids concluded with the city under control. From the command center near Midway Airport, Director Helena Vasquez received all reports from the tactical teams. Over 120 suspects arrested, $8,600,000 frozen, tons of narcotics and weapons seized. The CJNG financial pipeline in Chicago was officially paralyzed, but what the agents were interested in wasn't just the metrics. The data files seized from computers, phones, and hard drives revealed a deeper layer of connection between crime, business, and local politics. The financial analysis team scrutinized every transaction. They discovered 5 large transfers from the shell companies to the campaign funds of several politicians in Illinois. Records proved these amounts were legitimized as legal donations. However, when cross-referenced with the origin, they came from companies directly linked to the logistics chain run by the CJNG. This finding was presented by Vasquez directly to Washington. Internally, it was called the power loophole evidence that the network was not just smuggling but also infiltrating the political strata. The FBI's counterintelligence division opened a parallel investigation, tracing the list of potentially involved individuals. The files were sealed top secret. The digital forensics team worked non-stop to decrypt thousands of messages, emails, and transaction documents. Initial results showed at least 5 local politicians and 2 city contractors had received indirect funding from companies on the blacklist. All evidence was stored in the federal system, ready for indictment. Meanwhile, public opinion began to deeply divide. Human rights activists still criticized Operation Midway Blitz for its scale and federal intervention. They argued Chicago was being turned into a military zone. Conversely, local security agencies and residents in areas once dominated by the gang viewed the operation as a necessary turning point. Street shootings and drug incidents dropped sharply after just a few days. Many neighborhoods that were once criminal hideouts were now cleared. Inside the command center, no one allowed themselves to be complacent. The recovered data had not been fully decrypted. The server system in a Bridgeview warehouse still held a massive amount of information, encrypted in 3 layers. The ICE technical team coordinated with the NSA to begin decryption, and after 18 hours, they traced a new communication chain, a signal originating from the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. The content clearly indicated a plan to re-establish the transport route via the Central Rail Line and the Mississippi River. The network was not eradicated, it was shifting. Vasquez ordered a force redeployment. A team of special agents was dispatched to Missouri and Wisconsin to coordinate the pursuit of the new leads. The Department of Homeland Security launched a wide-area electronic surveillance operation, collecting international communication data related to Guadalajara. Washington approved emergency funding, extending the operation's scope by 4 states. Midway Blitz was officially redefined from a criminal sweep operation to a national counter-offensive doctrine against transnational crime. On the ground, tactical teams maintained a high state of readiness. Some agents injured in the initial phase returned to duty after recovery. All forces were reassigned, setting up a quick reaction system around major transportation hubs. Intelligence reports confirmed the CJNG was attempting to reactivate transit routes using small businesses to create a new cover for the money laundering chain. To prevent this, financial control units were authorized to immediately freeze any accounts showing signs of a connection. That afternoon, the Secretary of Homeland Security announced the first report on the operation at a press conference in Washington. His voice was calm yet firm. This is not just a law enforcement effort. This is a transition phase in our domestic security strategy. The report concluded, the criminal network was neutralized in Chicago, major transport routes were cut, the level of drug crime decreased by over 60%, and there were no civilian casualties. Back in Chicago, Vasquez stood before the electronic map. The red dots were now scattered, but a new cluster had just appeared north of Wisconsin. She ordered the deployment of a drone reconnaissance team and the establishment of a new forward operating base. Her voice was dry, without emotion. Ending one network doesn't mean ending the threat. Those present in the room understood. The city's silence was only temporary. Operation Midway Blitz had succeeded, but the war with the CJNG was still expanding across the entire Midwest where the shadow had not yet surrendered. Chicago returned to normal life, but the atmosphere remained tense. The streets were cleaner, the neighborhoods quieter, but within the security system, everyone understood the storm wasn't over. Surveillance data showed isolated signals from Wisconsin, Missouri, and Iowa. Traces of the CJNG network's restructuring were forming. From Washington, a new order was sent down. Maintain the Midway Blitz doctrine. No reaction. Proactive defense. The new doctrine transformed Chicago into the security control center for the Midwest. The electronic surveillance system was expanded, and rail lines, cargo ports, and logistics centers were equipped with thermal and chemical sensor identification devices. ICE and DEA agents coordinated continuously, conducting random checks of every suspicious shipment. Quick reaction teams were deployed across 5 states, ready to move within 1 hour of receiving an order. Vasquez signed off on the long-term deployment plan, building an integrated surveillance network between federal agencies, combining financial intelligence and transportation logistics. No longer just an operation, Midway Blitz became a strategic model, a mechanism for domestic defense against the systematic infiltration of transnational crime. Reports from the Department of Homeland Security confirmed a sharp drop in smuggling and organized crime cases, but the risk of re-establishment remained high if the Mexican core was not completely dismantled. In northern Wisconsin, a reconnaissance force discovered a warehouse disguised as an import-export company. When checked, the facility was empty. However, in the storage area, agents found signs of a new transport route, preparation containers, packaging materials, and a list of newly hired workers. The evidence suggested the CJNG had begun its recovery phase. Vasquez ordered absolute secrecy, preventing the public from knowing that the cycle was turning again. In an internal report sent to Washington, she wrote, "The United States no longer reacts after the incident. The United States is defending." That statement quickly became the motto for the entire force. Small command centers were established along the northern border. Every new agent was trained according to the Midway Doctrine: attack before being attacked. The city of Chicago stood between 2 extremes. Outside was life returning to normal, inside was a tightened security network. The agents who participated in the operation returned to their units, carrying the scars and memories of a day of fighting. They knew the enemy hadn't vanished, just changed shape. Dawn broke over the city, light reflecting on the doors still bearing breach marks, and the bullet holes in the brick walls. A group of agents left the command center, quietly checking the patrol points again. They wore no medals, made no statements, they just acted. For them, the mission didn't end, it transitioned to a standby status. On the command screen, the map of Chicago glowed with a few remaining green dots. Vasquez watched silently for a few seconds and then said softly, "They'll rebuild, but so will we." No one responded. Outside, the city lived on, peaceful on the surface, but beneath that layer, Midway Blitz was still operating silently, persistently, and ready to activate whenever the shadow returned.